I had just gone through a pretty rough divorce a few months ago. For the brief 2 years my wife and I were married, most of our nights ended up turning into shouting matches and insults. We were always so loud we had gotten several noise complaints and an eventual ultimatum. Anyway, we ended the whole thing, and she got most of everything. The house belonged to her family, along with most everything in it. She left me with nothing but my clothes, some photos, and my dog Riley. I was so short on money at the time. Luckily, a friend of mine let me stay at his place for as long as I needed. While there, I was looking for a better job to help me get my life back on track. My search led me to an opening for a campus security guard at the local community college. I arrived at the interview to learn that this was a job for the night shift. I wasn't sure about taking the job at first, but my bills and growing debts weren't going to pay off themselves. Needless to say, I started the next night. The campus itself was a decent size, both in terms of area and the number of students. The core campus includes 14 educational and auxiliary buildings. The security office was by the south entrance of the college, situated on the second floor of the parking garage. The 2 senior security guards, James and Darnell, walked me through my job description. My task every night was to complete 2 full searches around campus, checking all the buildings and monitoring the security cameras. My shift would start at 9:30 at night and go through till 6 in the morning, by which time I'd take the bus home. The job itself wasn't too bad. I kinda developed a pretty good friendship with James and Darnell since there was a brief period of time our shifts would overlap, but by the time they both left, which would be midnight for me, I'd be alone on campus. It's so surreal how such a place that's bustling and so full of students can so quickly empty out and turn silent. When my shift starts, there's usually a few cars left in the lot for those who took evening classes. Some instructors and other staff would sometimes work extra late, but those instances were rare. In short, my interaction with other people besides my coworkers was almost non-existent. Sometimes on break or in between circuits, if it stayed quiet on campus, I'd read a book or listen to spooky stories on the phone. After listening, I would start to feel a little creeped out for being in a campus all alone after dark, but I got used to it. It'd kill the boredom until I started my next circuit anyway. I wouldn't find much of anything outside of the ordinary, aside from the odd random object left behind by a student, which I would bring back to the lost and found. I just had to make sure there was no one else hanging around after closing. After coming back, I would check the security footage in case I missed something. There were a few screens recording specific spots with the most activity during the day. One for each parking lot, one for each floor in all buildings, and one for the administrative office. I got decent pay every couple of weeks. After a while, I moved out of my friend's house and got a small apartment, and was saving up for a used car. Felt like my luck was starting to turn, finally. Then I had the scariest experience of my life. I was left alone around midnight, like always. The campus was absolutely deserted at this time like normal. It was summer during this time, so the night was pretty warm. Felt like I was building a bit of sweat in my security uniform while doing my first circuit. I came back to the security office after finding nothing of note, and checked the camera feed. I found nothing in any of the screens until I checked the one for the south lot, near the office. While the screen was small, I could discern the moving of a large shadow across one of the lampposts. It was doing nothing but moving back and forth across the light. The shadow looked too large to be some kind of bird or animal. I deduced it had to be someone parked off the screen so I couldn't visibly see him. I went out there to check things out and found nothing there. If it were a person just fucking around, they would have had to have left a sign of their presence. There was nothing left behind. I didn't hear a car driving off, or any noise for that matter. I scoped the rest of the south to find the source of the shadow. Still nothing. I sighed in annoyance at the thought of some jackass deciding to waste my time. Nothing else happened the rest of that night. I got used to sleeping during the day, but all I could afford to sleep on was a cheap couch that was anything but comfortable. It was rare that I got a full 8 hours of sleep on it, and to top it all off, the AC unit had crapped out. My cheap apartment had gotten warmer, making it much harder to sleep. I got to the college at the start of my shift with maybe 4 or 5.5 hours of sleep. I had coffee, but that would only last for so long. With it being extremely late, my office feeling cool, and it being quiet everywhere, I started feeling drowsy. Sleeping on the job wasn't allowed, of course, but every now and then I'd let myself have a brief nap to refresh myself. So I set my head on my desk and fell asleep instantly. I was later jolted awake. A feeling of something very wrong switched my tired mind on alert and woke me up. I rubbed my eyes and checked the monitors to see if everything was up. I looked at the camera feed for the south lot, and my eyes narrowed. Beneath one of the lamplights, a person was standing. Not doing anything, just being very still. I couldn't make out any details, but this person had long black hair and looked very tall, almost reaching the light. I looked at the bottom of the screen and found the camera was still recording. Whoever the camera was showing was still there. The feeling that jolted me awake intensified, and I was aware of myself shaking. A chill colder than the air inside the office crept up my neck. My body was reacting to some sort of danger the image was giving off. Still, a weird person on the security footage was not an excuse to not do my job. I got to the lot in under a minute, and I saw that person still standing under the lamplight, just being dead still. Their back was facing toward me, and their heads seemed to be bowed forward. As I approached closer to try to get their attention, I found this trespasser to be very tall and lanky, and appeared to be wearing a dirty white dress. I called to her again, asking if she needed help, but she didn't respond. She just kept standing like a statue where she was. I reached out to touch her, and my hand retracted back from the burning sensation her skin gave off, as if she were on fire. I cursed and shook my hand to cool it off, and the lady moved for the first time. Her head lifted upward, as if finally acknowledging that I was there. She turned around, and I started to track backwards. Her body was humanoid, but she had the head of a goat or a ram. The fur was pitch black, contrasting against her pale skin and white dress. The eyes were red, like burning embers, and strands of flesh hung off its carved horns. As my backwards walk sped up, I could hear it give off a deep, thunderous roar. I ran back toward the office, and I swear I could hear the thing sprinting after me. I ran faster than I ever ran in my life, and I barricaded myself in the security office. For good measure, I switched off the lights inside and called 911. I told them something was on campus, and they sent someone over. I hung up and strained my ears to hear any noise outside of my office. It was hard to hear anything over the pounding of my heart working overtime. It felt like an eternity before I heard the knocking at the door. The cops made their presence known, and I slowly opened the door. They questioned me about what it was that I called for. When I told them, they looked at me as if I were a mental patient or a drug user. I played the footage back for them, and there the thing was. At the very least, they weren't going to arrest me for making a fake emergency call, but with the trespasser gone, there wasn't much they could do. They left, and I was once again alone. This time, I was very afraid. Not that I was alone, but that I wasn't. That thing is still out there. I wasn't taking any chances. I waited in that office. I kept the door locked until the end of my shift. I left a note saying that I resigned immediately. And never went back.